Hello, my friends, and welcome to the podcast where our goal is to remind you that amidst the chaos and craziness of the world today, there is still plenty of good that is worth shouting about. In each episode, we highlight the stories of another creator of good in the world. Nonprofit, for-profit, it doesn't matter. We know that when you use what you have to add to the world, we can make the world better. This is Creating Good with me, Matt Barnes. Let's create some good. Hello, my friends. It is another episode of Creating Good with Matt Barnes. I'm Matt Barnes, Matt from Rogue everywhere online, and I'm excited. We got a great episode today. Really cool stuff from our guest. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, welcome to the podcast. We are a movement. Creating Good is a movement that we have started to really inspire people and push people, motivate them to use what we have to create good in the world, whether that's through business, whether that's through nonprofit, or just as people, and that we can come together and make the world a better place through simple things, just using what we have. We can solve problems, we can make the world better. And I don't know, I like to hear the stories of people doing that because it inspires me, it gets me excited about it. Today, Jonathan Bennett from, he's an executive coach and strategic advisor for ClearlyThen Inc., and he is doing exactly that. He is creating good in the world using his passion, his love. He is a coaching and advisory service that he provides to CEOs, executive teams, and boards across North America. He's deeply rooted in fostering social purpose and ethical leadership. He's been a CEO. He's been a board member for several organizations, big ones, and he's had 25 years of leadership, creativity, and commitment to positive change. And this is the kind of person that, you know, we want to have on this podcast because he's somebody who really is out there just using what he has, his passion, to make a difference and help other people make a difference as well. So I had a great conversation with Jonathan. You're going to want to hear it. Jonathan Bennett, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Matt.
Yeah, I get, we get a lot of Canadians on this podcast. Are you, I know you're in Canada. Where in Canada are you?
Located in Ontario, about halfway between Toronto and Ottawa.
All right. And is that where you grew up?
I grew up in Sydney, Australia. So I have this fading kind of mid-Pacific accent.
It kind of comes in and out, you know?
Yeah, but I've been in Canada for a very long time, for 30, 40 years. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, the people that from Canada, the Canadians that have been on the podcast, have had just really, really great things, insights and viewpoints, and so the bar's high for you today, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
No pressure, right? We have a segment we like to start with every episode called 3 Random Questions. We've got a list of about 100 random questions, and then we randomly chose 3. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. What is something that you get nerdy about?
I get pretty nerdy about cricket, which is a sport that is played in lots of places, but increasingly in America.
Yeah.
You recently had the World Cup in your country. So a little taste of cricket. So I get super nerdy about that. Yeah.
All right. My kids watch Bluey, of course. I don't know if you're familiar with Bluey from Australia.
I do know that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple episodes that refer to cricket, so we've learned
a little bit there.
Learned a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'd heard of cricket, but I didn't know much about it. But yeah, it's a huge sport outside of the United States. I know, obviously, like you said, it's building. But
second biggest sport in the world. Yep. I mean, India is a huge part of why that is true. But yes.
Yeah. All right. Second question: what is a bucket list item that you have yet to cross off your list?
Oh, well, actually, I just kind of said it. I would love to go to India. Definitely a place that I've just spent so much of my life thinking about India because I'm a cricket nerd. And I would just love to visit. I'm really fascinated by the culture and the history and folks there. So I would love to go.
Yeah, it's a great place. I went, 2005 was the last time I went to India, but it's a very cool place. A lot of people. A lot of people.
There's a lot of people there. This is true.
All right. Last question. What is your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Mint chocolate chip. Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip. Nice. Good choices. All right. You have passed 3 random questions. Excellent job. We will move on
Nice.
to the interview now.
Fun.
All right, tell us about yourself. Where'd you come from? What's your origin story, and how'd you get to where you're at now?
Yeah, for sure. So I went to university in Canada, and all I wanted to was write novels and poetry, and I did that. And I spent a good number of years writing books and publishing books, and had a pretty, modestly successful career as a writer in Canada. But it turns out, kids, poetry doesn't pay. So I needed a job along the way. And what came to me fairly easily was obviously storytelling and communications. And I grew this kind of, what began as a kind of secondary career to pay the bills in kind of corporate communications. I'm a progressive person, really interested in social justice. And so I gravitated to the nonprofit sector where I was doing comms. And over time, just increasing roles of sophistication, I found myself on the senior team of a huge hospital.
Sure.
And I was the chief communications officer and director of planning. And I had really, by that point, moved over to general management and lots of exposure to boards of directors. And I was there for about 7 years. It felt like 3 free MBAs. We built a new hospital. I made it through 2 CEOs. It was a really like an excruciatingly interesting and complex environment to be in, especially during that time. And I kind of just hit the wall one day. And my eldest kid is autistic, and at that time they were pretty little, 6, 7, and just their needs were pretty kind of at the forefront of my life. And I just didn't have the time to be the kind of dad I knew I needed and wanted to be. So I quit. And I thought, what else should I do? I'm kind of, I live in a small city, kind of in the middle of nowhere. So, it's like most privileged white guys, I'm like, oh, I should be a consultant. Like, how hard could that be? So I did. I hung out a shingle and faked it till I made it, I suppose. We, over the next 10 years, grew a company that served nonprofits, and we were largely a strategic planning, brand positioning, governance type strategy shop. And we became a B Corp. And I sold the company about 2.5 years ago to one of my colleagues who continues it on to this day. It's called Laraday. It's an amazing company. And these days, I'm an executive coach and a independent board director. I sit on a number of corporate boards and a nonprofit board as well. And I spend lots of time helping leaders of all kinds all across North America with all of their problems.
Wow.
So it's fun work.
Are you mostly focused on Canada or anywhere in North America?
I have clients all over the US and all over
wonderful.
Canada.
Wonderful. All right, I want to go back a little bit just because of my curiosity. What type of stuff were you writing? What kind of a author were you? You were writing books and poetry?
Oh yeah. Thanks. Yeah. So like literary work. So short stories, literary novels. I've published 7 books. So
Nice.
there were 3 novels, a collection of short stories, and 3 books of poems.
Awesome. Very cool. And then you went and you started your consultancy. Obviously there was things in between there, but you started your consultancy, which is really cool that it's still going and that you can be proud of something that you've got to get started and pass the baton to. What was the, as you're working with nonprofits, what were some of the biggest challenges that you found in that? Were you working mostly with nonprofits in Canada or both United States and Canada?
Yeah, that was just in Canada.
In Canada,
I would say most of our work was in healthcare and social services, but
okay.
Quite a bit in arts and culture and economic development and a few other, higher ed. We had clients really pretty broadly, but I'd say there was kind of an over focus on healthcare and social services. So sorry, just tell me your question again.
Yeah. Well, what was, maybe 1 or 2 of the biggest challenges that you regularly came up against with nonprofits?
Yeah. So I think a kind of like deficit sort of mindset, like we are doing what we can do. We don't have enough of anything. How do we take on more? And we're expected to continually take on more and do more, but with no more resources, and everybody's stretched so thin. And interesting challenge for me as a consultant in all of those sorts of planning spaces was to light up people's imagination and reconnect them with the values and the purpose of their work. Because when you move into an abundance approach to doing planning work, into thinking about your purpose as an organization, suddenly new things can come into focus, different partnerships, different opportunities. And, I've always thought it's a great, like one of the great tragedies of the sector is that we just don't pay people properly, and that we espouse all these really progressive values, and then we do it on the backs of workers. And I have a real problem with that. And I, never missed an opportunity to point that out to my clients, that they need to show up for their own staff, and they need to make sure that their staff are taken care of and that there's benefits. And, we're very fortunate, obviously, in Canada to have a publicly funded healthcare system. And, I don't want to dig too far into that, lest I hurt everybody's feelings. But I would say, that does take a huge amount of pressure off for a lot of organizations and a lot of workers. But it's still not enough. If you're not paying a living wage, then out of one side of your mouth, you can't be all about, lifting people up and social justice issues on the other. So that, I'd say that was one of the biggest challenges that I routinely saw.
Yeah. And I mean, that is very obviously very common. I don't know if you've seen the documentary Uncharitable that came out last year, talks about a lot of that. The interesting thing for me about a lot of this, the kind of, focus on like a scarcity mindset and all, the not investing in your employees and paying them a fair wage and all of that, is there's the ethical side of it, which you've pointed out, but it's also, there's a strategic side of that, that you see that when people do,
sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. When people pay people well, when they're taken care of, when all those things are addressed, you perform better as well. You're gonna get ahead. So it's how do you, because it is so commonplace, it's such a common, especially in the nonprofit space, for people to get trapped in that mindset. How practically do you work with people to, executives, executive directors, different people in leadership, to make those changes and to change those mindsets?
Yeah, I'd like to focus on the output and the value that organizations are creating. And I think that sometimes they've become accustomed to chasing grant money, to adding, like their, because we're not focused on profit margin, we tend to measure our success in body counts, like how many people work for us. And often when you go into a room full of nonprofit executive directors and you say, tell me about your organization, after they've told you about their catchment areas and their funders, they'll tell you how many people work there.
Yeah.
And, when you're in the private sector, and I certainly have all kinds of different issues with that private sector, but that's not how they think. They think about things like margin and, serving their customer base and all that sort of stuff. They're the first things that will come out of their mouths. And I just think that there's a real interest there. Like I'm drawn to that, and I'm sort of like intensely curious about it. So just to try to help people think about how to talk about what they do and how to think about what they do, that is not in terms of just like building and adding to the base of humans that they're employing as a sign of their success. It ought to be, what is the impact that they're having? How do they measure that impact? And the people that do the work, they need to be grounded, and they need to be, paid well enough that they think that they've got a career, and that they are taken care of, and that they can do their best work. And if that means that you have to have less people but pay the people that are there better, then so be it. If that means that there's different ways that you can get the work done, through partnerships, through leveraging volunteers, which is a completely different orientation than unpaid work, then I think that they're the ways to go. But, to just stretch people out and cash in essentially on people's ethics and goodwill and their cause-related orientation to showing up in the workforce, to me is, I just think it's limiting. It's limited. I don't think that the next generation coming through is going to put up with it.
Yeah.
And I already see a lot of change. and the executive directors that have been doing the work for a very long time, are retiring, and that I think is also okay, right? It's okay. Things change, and some fresh water in the stream, as they say, is not an unhealthy thing.
Yeah, yeah. Part of my background is in organizational leadership, and I've done consulting and I've worked with a lot of nonprofit leaders. And one of the things that you mentioned of, sometimes considering having less staff, and that you can actually really take care of, which a lot of times means cutting back on your scope a little bit. And nonprofits are notorious for scope creep, right? Like seeing, oh, well, there's that thing over there, and we could do that too. And you're like, but that's not really related to what you're doing. I've had that conversation numerous times with nonprofit leaders, and the reception is never great. How do you get them on board with that? Because they get so into, no, we have to do that thing. And I'm going, well, if you didn't do that thing, you could pay these people better and be really good at this thing. And there's a lack of willingness to let go of, I don't know if it's about status, I don't know if it's about ego, but there's those elements in there. What have you found to be the thing that cuts through it?
I think it comes from having scrapped together and scraped together every last penny in order to make this thing go.
Yeah.
And the reluctance and the history that's sitting there comes from that sort of, hard fought, hard scrabbled journey to just cobble together enough. And so even when organizations start to scale and start to do work at a bigger level, that sort of DNA is still inside. And it is hard. I think what works is when a board of directors shows up for the conversation in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
So, you might have a longstanding, experienced, beloved executive director even, who's doing this kind of work and, will not let go of the 0.5 FTE that it does their bookkeeping when the organization across town is 4 times the size and is willing to do a joint venture on it and share the cost, and we could just purchase a service, and they won't do that, even though they get more sophisticated software, they get a higher level of service, their employees are going to be better taken care of in the back office. They still say no, and they say no because they fought so hard for that FTE and they're scraping it from 3 different pots of money.
Right.
And
right.
A board of directors can help an executive director see that thinking is not moving the organization ahead, and there's a huge cost to not thinking more creatively and more openly about some of these sorts of ways of aligning their money to their mission.
Yeah, and in the nonprofit world where we are, working to make the world better, help people, climate, whatever it might be, that a lack of money, less money means also helping less people or impacting your mission less so. And so that's where I sometimes I get tied up in that, where I'm like, but if you could think creatively, if you could be more innovative with this, we could push ahead here and do something a little different, you're going to help more people. It's in the end, it can't be about just whatever numbers or things you for some reason have been, for the different reasons you mentioned, trained to care about. Totally. We got to think about the end result, and we can help more people, or we can be more effective in fighting climate change or whatever it might be if we're open to doing things different ways.
Yeah, totally, man.
So now, as you're doing executive coaching, are most of your clients still nonprofits, or are you kind of across the board?
It's pretty mixed. I've probably got about half are in the nonprofit space, and the other half are for-profit, but most of them are social purpose kinds of businesses. Yeah. I was a founder of a B Corp, so I have a real affinity for using business as a force for good, and holding businesses accountable for their social and environmental footprints, for just being better stewards of the participating in the communities in which they operate. So I am keen to serve those leaders as well. I find both, and the intersection is interesting. There's lots of play interplay between the two, and so I take from both and use that, and yeah, I feel really fortunate.
Well, it sounds a lot like I've been having a lot of conversations lately about really when it comes down to it, the delineation between nonprofit and for-profit doesn't mean that much to me. I want to work with people who want to do good in the world, and if they're using a for-profit to do good in the world, that's awesome. If you're doing nonprofit, but I think all of us, even people who are like myself, who maybe have for-profits and are trying to use them for good and work with nonprofits and help, getting that outside perspective and seeing how you might be missing it in some ways or new ways to think about things is always very helpful. Is that a lot of what you sort of bring to the table for them?
Yeah, I do. And I think I've benefited from working across multiple sectors and working with lots of different leaders in lots of different jurisdictions, because things that, you learn in arts and culture maybe are different and applicable, but in a different way in healthcare or in social services. And like these sectors are siloed in their own special, precious ways.
Right.
And even getting them to talk, with one another is great. So, I have over the years, and I still continue to host places for leaders to come together and just talk about big issues that are important to them. And, we I have a monthly free open, like drop in, and leaders come and we have a topic, and, it'll be, like imposter syndrome, or it'll be perfectionism, just leadership topics that people really struggle with. It doesn't matter whether the leader is in the nonprofit or for-profit sector. They're struggling with all of these same things.
Yeah, absolutely. How with your nonprofit executives and people that you're working with, what do people tend to seek you out for and really need the most help with?
Yeah. People management is a lot. When the phone rings and somebody's really, really upset, we're into the last throes of somebody needing to fire somebody. And so I will spend a lot of time hearing the story, unwinding the story. Where are the feelings versus the truth? How are we going to do this? What's in the best interest of the organization? How are you going to manage it? Where's the comms? So I shepherd leaders through making really difficult decisions.
Yeah.
And I've kind of I've earned a lot of credibility in that space because I've been doing it for a long time. And so often the phone will ring and I just get, oh, it's me, I've got a Jonathan problem. And so that lights me up to think that people think of me when things are really tough. People will think of me as somebody that really can support them through. And so, yep, I do, people cry and like it can be hard at times, like all that stuff. But, I'd say other than the people stuff, the relationship that EDs and CEOs have with their boards, that's a close second. Managing their boards of directors. So as somebody that sat on boards, and I'm a chartered director and I have a lot of experience with boards and doing governance training, I can help EDs think about how to manage that really often tense space that exists between them and their, and their board, and how they can get the most out of their board, how they can get their board out of their business, how the board can be effective with the stewardship role that they have. So I'd say that's probably a pretty close second. I still get called to support organizations doing strategy work, and so I'll still do the odd bit of strategic planning work, which I do enjoy still. I don't have the capacity to do the great big strat plans that I used to do at my old company, but I still like to walk along with small and mid-sized organizations from time to time and do some strategy work. It's still fun.
Nice. Going back to the board thing, that's obviously something that comes up a lot. Board, the relationship between the board and an executive director or CEO or whatever the titles are, but they tend to be problematic sometimes or tense, like you said. What's the most common thing that leads to that? Like, why is that the case? Because it seems like it doesn't need to be that way, but there seems to be some sort of common dysfunction that happens there. What do you see that as?
Yeah, mostly it's that people join a nonprofit board and they don't actually understand what the role is.
Yeah.
And they just bring their day job hat to that role, and they, get in the weeds and they meddle. They don't know where the boundaries are. They talk, outside of school. Like they get the basics wrong because they just haven't had any training. And if you think about it, where else in life could you run something and have like literally no experience or no training doing it? And yet we ask volunteers to show up for, monthly meetings and subcommittee meetings and, AGMs and the strategy session. Like volunteers are giving a ton of time. And yet, almost you could be on nonprofit boards for 10 years. And this happens to me all the time. I'll go in and do training and I'll say, okay, so like we're going to go to the fundamentals. We're going to talk about your fiduciary duties. Like these are the core duties that you have as a director.
Yeah.
And I'll talk to experienced people and they're like, no one's really ever said that to me before. Like nobody actually read the law, like that's in the act out.
Right.
And these are the anchoring parts that help us understand why we're in the room and how we move like an organization forward and what's our accountability and our responsibilities. And so, once we start to understand the duties that we hold as directors, then we can, I think, do a better job of understanding where our boundaries are, where our accountabilities are, the sorts of performance management that we want to have with an executive director. And I always like to think about the relationship between an ED and a board as kind of having healthy tension. Like if a board of directors, it's right for a board of directors to ask hard questions and expect answers and follow up and for them to follow through. That's great. Yeah. That's appropriate.
Yeah.
But it's not right for them to get down into the weeds and stay there.
Yeah.
They can, go on an excursion because something's really bad or they really feel the need to dip in. But it takes a really mature board to say, okay, and we've satisfied ourselves right now, we're getting back up. Yeah. And we're going to allow our paid expert, who's the executive director, to do his or her work properly.
Right.
And, and just get back up to the right level. And that I think is a constant struggle for most boards. It's very difficult, but, I like to hold the space with boards and allow them to kind of work through where they're at in that journey. Mostly it gets, when it's at its worst and most dysfunctional, it's a board that's become distrustful. So the classic kind of narrative will be that they had a lot of trust of an executive director, and without understanding what was really going on, the board oversaw an ED doing something that was really bad, like driving the organization into the ground financially. Let's say that's usually the classic example, and they found out too late. And somehow they were able to, they let the person go, also traumatic, and they've got a new person in, and things are starting to actually turn around, but they're still hurting.
Yeah.
And they're still meddling. And in the back of their mind, they're thinking, not again on my watch.
Right.
And that mindset is really deadly for that poor new executive director who did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And who's just done a turnaround.
Yeah.
And has got a board that won't take their proverbial foot off their head. And it's really hard. So often I find myself in there helping a board say, guys, that was 3 years ago now. You have a fine new executive director. Your balance sheet is turning around and it's getting healthy. You need to let go.
Yeah.
Like we need to let this go now, and everything needs to be well again because she's going to leave.
Yeah. Is the solution or one of the solutions, making board positions, descriptions, roles more clear and explicit, and doing better orientation job? Is it recruiting more intentionally? What's the one or two solutions that you could give to nonprofits that have had these problems?
Yes, to the core foundational pieces that you said. Boards that have strong recruitment and onboarding processes that do set boundaries, that follow their own rules, that's setting yourself up for some success. Boards that are the highest functioning I see have lots of time for generative discussion, and the very highest functioning ones have time for self-reflection. Was that a good meeting? Did I talk too much? Are we talking about the right thing? That decision that we made, how do we feel about that?
Yeah.
Did everybody participate? They're just paying attention to how they're showing up in meetings. They're paying attention to the way they make decisions, to the way they have discussions, to the ramifications of how paid staff are looking at them and seeing how they're behaving. And there's a level of kind of like, it sounds funny, but like collective self-awareness that a board has. And often it'll be the maturity of the chair and a couple of senior people on the board that will help a board kind of get to that place. And, boards can get there, and then it can only take one or two people to leave and the skill set just left.
Right,
and,
right.
A perfectly great board suddenly is not that great anymore. And it really was wrapped around a couple people. So how you codify that is the next sort of trick. So it's not enough to wrap it around, we've got this great chair, oh my God, I hope he doesn't leave. Like, that's not good. He's going to leave. So what we do is we make sure that, at the end of every meeting, we ask ourselves the same 5 questions, or we embed this process of reflection every other meeting, or we send out a survey and we actually follow through and we display the results, whatever your tool is that you want to use that works for you.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things I've noticed with boards is so often you've got a collection of people who in their areas are, leaders, they're successful businessmen or women, and they've done well in their areas. And they're used to being leaders. They're used to being the one that calls the shots, and then they all get in the room, and sometimes it becomes a little bit of a, for lack of a better term, pissing contest, or kind of I'm just gonna, I'll just go fix that and I'll take care of that, and he doesn't know what he's doing, that kind of thing. So helping what I've seen is sometimes helping board members know specifically why they were chosen and what we need them for, the role of a general board member, but then also what is the specific thing we need you to bring to this, can help give some of those boundaries as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot. It's just hard for people to learn how the role is not what they do during the day. The filter that they need to leave behind is that, they've paid somebody else to be on the nut here.
Yeah.
And it's their job to be curious and to ask really thoughtful questions.
Sure.
And expect follow-up and follow through.
Yeah.
And that it feels counterintuitive to an A type who's just get her done.
Yeah.
That, is like, board work is rarely checklisty and to-do-y. And so not in that typical kind of operational way. And it takes a while to find that gear, in your brain and in your orientation to the work. But, good boards and good board members find it, and they're magic when they do the kind of support work that an executive director, like, I have clients who, just like fawn over their boards. They're like, oh my God, I love my board. I mean, they kick my ass, don't get me wrong, but like, they're so great and they're so smart and they're just at the right level. And, they don't let me down. And when I really need them, and, and if I need to call like the lawyer to ask, for me to prep questions for our real lawyer, like, they'll give me that time. And like, you get that kind of, you do get that. It's out there.
Yeah.
Like, they're not all bad, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, one last question on that topic. And that is, what one piece of advice would you give to an ED who is in that kind of a position? They have a board that's difficult, or doesn't understand their boundaries, or that type of thing. What, aside from obviously hiring you, what would be just a piece of advice to give them?
It's not going to get better by itself with no intervention. So show up and have the hard conversation, which sounds something like, hey, everyone, I just wanted to protect half an hour of this meeting and we'll go in camera. Here's what is showing up for me. I'm finding it difficult when, you don't tell me that you're not all going to come to a board meeting and we don't have quorum, or you start talking over yourself, and my staff are here and they're watching that, and they come back to me confused and they don't think very highly of you. And then I have to defend you, or whatever the situation is. Showing up and just putting that out there and saying what your needs are. As an executive director, I really need the following from you: A, B, and C. And I'm wondering whether we can build a new agreement between us all to act in this new way. And also, if we are going to agree that we're going to act in this new way and behave and, whatever the circumstances are, what do we do if we start to slip?
Right.
Like, I know none of us will want to, but just say we do. How will we do that? Because something got us to where we got to, that we're now having to create this intervention. So, my tip is to sort of embed the course correction before it happens while everybody's feeling good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's super helpful. That's, people, I think those practical, just even you get in the middle of a situation like that feels chaotic and has pressure. It's hard to even see that there are words that you could use, because there's so much emotion tied to it.
Yeah, Matt, it's so true. It really is.
So sometimes just even that, like giving them those words is just the most helpful thing. And so I really appreciate that. One last question for you, and that we always end with, which is, what is the thing in your job that brings you the most joy?
Oh, I mean, I hold a really intimate space between the clients that I support as a trusted advisor and a coach. I've been able to really positively, completely change people's lives, and it's just so powerful. And and no one knows that I'm doing it, like, other than the person, right?
Right.
It's a very, I completely confidential service. Like, I don't tell people what I do, but I know what I've done, and it really just makes my whole world. And like, I had a circumstance this morning, and I've been kind of like going alongside a leader of a really like prominent foundation, and she's completely transformed that organization, and we've just built the strategy together over the last 9 months. And it just, to watch it kind of play out, like, she's done all the work.
Yeah.
But to have gone and walked with her, and asked her hard questions, and maybe given her some ideas to try and stuff, and like, it's a completely different job. She's loving it. She's killing it. And I just like, it's so uplifting. I feel so privileged to be able to do the work I do.
That's amazing. And the domino effect of that too. It's not just that she's happier, that the organization's healthier, the people are healthier, the end result, if they're helping people or whatever that is they're doing, is being more impacted and effective, because it does start from the top. It always does. And if you can do what you're doing and give them a different perspective and some hope and some strategy, I mean, it's the effect is the ripples of that can be endless, and you may never even know the full impact of everything.
No, you have to make peace with that, for sure. I mean, just even in really simple ways, like, it can be pretty lonely to be a leader, and so there's only so much you can tell your staff or your spouse when you come home, or you're bored, and so what do? You just keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And there's only so long you can leave the lid on the jar. So I'm lucky to be there when the proverbial lid comes off, and be able to help them with that. And it's great work.
Well, that's amazing. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your journey with us. I think these are such practical things that so many nonprofit leaders deal with, and even for-profit leaders who are just trying to do good and figure out the best way to do it. What's the best way people can get in touch with you or follow you, find you?
Yeah, thanks. So you can check me out online at ClearlyThen.com. That's my website. I'm really active on LinkedIn, so if you want to reach out to me, I'm a real person. Send me a DM. I almost always spend an hour with people that are interested in coaching as a trial, to just see if we're a fit, to see if I can help. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, feel free to hit me up, and we can jump on a call.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and best of luck in everything you're doing, and congratulations on all the success.
Thanks, Nate.
Creating Good with Matt Barnes is recorded at Rogue Collective in beautiful Newport Beach, California. It's hosted and executive produced by me, Matt Barnes. Post-production is by our amazing friends over at Fame, the B2B podcast agency. Writing is by Matt Barnes and Taylor Bolanos from Rogue Creatives. Creative direction and design is overseen by Corey Hill of Rogue Creatives. Theme music is composed and performed by Jared Atherton of Chapters. Huge thanks to our amazing guests for joining us this episode, and thank you to all of you incredible listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, and I would imagine you did if you're still listening, so don't forget to help us spread some good by giving us a good review. Preferably like 5 stars, lots of really nice words. It's very helpful. Also, tell your friends and subscribe so we can come straight into your potholes each and every time we have a new episode. Take the Creating Good pledge on our website at creatinggood.co. We'll catch you next time. This has been a Rogue Creatives production.